It's a mix of everything. You have to have, ideally, in a fundraising strategy, everything on the board. So trusts and foundations will take a good, depending on, there are very few that give you an answer within a month or 2 or 6 weeks. Normally, you fill out the application, you have a 3 to 6 month waiting period, and you might ask for this much and they give you that much. Rarely do they give you more than you ask for. That's another thing to bear in mind. Then there's the whole approach to major donors, which are individuals who, if you have a team of volunteers or people who, or named individuals within your community that you think might really want to participate, anonymously or otherwise, that those need cultivating, really, whether it's a small event, a small dinner, whatever it is you're going to choose to do for those who might want to individually contribute. And then parallelly, corporations, businesses, local business, local churches, actually plugging it if you can. I don't know if you're allowed to, but if you can get up, ask pastor, the priest, whether you can have a plug after the service, and it suggests that maybe the churches that are involved can have a amount that they can contribute. So it has to be a mixed bag of everything, but you also have to have a sort of timeline. The time and the planning is key from the beginning, to know that you'll need that much longer for applications that have to be filled out to receive the funding. Hopefully, it's getting more and more difficult, mind you, amongst trusts and foundations, because they're really being hit quite hard. We don't have the same amounts of funding to distribute. So it's got to be a mix of everything. So I would suggest.
Can I just say something too? Obviously, it wasn't directed at me, but I think what's really important is that everything is intertwined. So, for example, Sharon was talking earlier that one of the reasons her latest thing fell down is because of the PR and marketing plan. But that's because when you involve yourself in any kind of funding, they want a visual representation, which means if you're waiting to cast and have a picture of your actor Jesus, you will be 6 months behind. So you already have to have a very strong image for your campaign to be able to include it with your grant. They need to have a very strong snapshot that you've already thought about all the areas, including your visual marketing, what your strategy is. And I think that's the tricky thing, is that, so I think when you're building a team, to have the menu of all the different facets of the project sort of covered with some kind of expertise in each, or consulting or something. That's you've got to present them almost a 360-degree plan, maybe good long before you even think about as a director trying to find the cast, trying to find that you might know what you want, but in sort of commercial sense, they'll often have a lead name. So if they've got a lead name, it will sell the project, and they can bang out a picture of that actor or something like that. But this is a very different thing. But I think that's the hardest thing, is that you've got to think 6 months ahead of the curve, because when your thing goes in, you are against all these other people, including the secular, who got big budget, well not big budget, will have budgeted people who are paid full time to work in a department on all these aspects. That's what you're kind of up against. I think it's totally achievable, but it's about being clever, smart, lean, doing a lot of the planning, because once you get people together, I think people's time is probably the most precious asset.
Yes.
And if you're asking something of somebody who's got very precious information, you need to know what you're asking them and when, because you might only have them for 10 minutes and that's it. So there's all that sort of stuff.
And also be realistic, because I've seen funding applications fall down because you put in this, we had a project, must have been about 15 years ago, we were putting in for a terrific project, put a lot of work in for it, but we budgeted 100 grand over 5 years for the project. And when we got through to them eventually and said, what was it, why did we fail? He said, you must have been joking, 100 grand over 5 years, 100 grand a year maybe, but just the fact that we didn't get the budget right for the practical aspects of it, the building work, they just threw out the rest of it. So if you turn around and say, I'm going to do this huge project that 12,000 people are going to come to in 5 different places across the city, and we want £3,000 for a PA system, you probably won't even get the rest of the project looked at, because they'll immediately look at it and say, you're joking.
And I'll use Kingsgate as an example in a sec, that Jesus taught us to ask and it'll be given, seek and you'll find. And we're tempted when we put on these plays to think that we have to produce the West End Theatre in our local town or whatever. that we must have this, and I talked about production values, keeping production values high. I would happily and do support the tiniest of projects as well, because I trust that they will grow if God wills them to grow. The Kingsgate is a perfect example of a church that a couple of actors from the church were part of Wintershall Productions, went back to their church saying, our church could do this. We then put on, 3 years ago, we put on the first, 4 years ago, we put on the first play, always with the vision, because the initial vision was we want to go out into the streets and we wanted to put on a big production. But the church recognised, first and foremost, they didn't want to do it if it was just their church. They wanted to do it as a many-church endeavour. But also they wanted to do it when they were ready, in God's time, when they knew it was the right time, and not stretch all the resources of the church, all the people's time and effort. And so they're slowly growing this fantastic foundation, where they're at the stage now where your church leader is talking to the other churches, has good dialogue with them, and suddenly I think something is going to happen in Kingston. And the audience will all think, my goodness, where's this come from? But you've grown it slowly. And I don't believe you're going to trip up on the funding or advertising or anything like that, because it's been a gradual growth. It would have been so tempting to have done it 4 years ago. And I think your church would have suffered, wouldn't they? They just wouldn't have had the resources or the time or energy to do it.